Montana Territory, September 1883. The train whistle screamed through the cold morning air as Persephone Dade stood on the wooden platform of the Miles City Station, her worn carpetbag gripped tight in one hand and her ticket to Chicago crumpled in the other. The wind whipped her dark hair free from its pins, but she did not bother to fix it. She was not coming back. Not to this town. Not to the memories that clung like smoke to every building, every dirt road, every creaking board of the boarding house she had run for the last 6 years. Not since her father died in July, and she realized there was nothing left for her here. Nothing, except the past and the man she had spent years trying not to love. Persephone! She turned, startled. A tall man dismounted from a dust-covered buckskin horse, his boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud. William Prescott. The cowboy who had been her father's ranch hand, then her tenant, then her quiet, steady shadow these last few years. His shirt was damp with sweat, his jaw tense. "Why are you here?" she asked, clutching the bag tighter. "I just rode from the south pasture." "Zeke said you were leaving?" "I am." Her voice was flat. "The train leaves in 10 minutes. He stepped closer, his brows drawn. "You never said anything." There was nothing to say. "There is everything to say," he said, eyes burning into hers. "Persephone, you cannot just vanish." She laughed once, bitter. "I have nothing left here, William. I buried my father in July. I sold the boarding house. I closed the books. I have no family, no place, no reason to stay." He looked at her like he wanted to argue, but he swallowed it down. "I'm not your reason?" he asked quietly. Her breath caught. "You never gave me one." He stepped closer, slow, careful, like she might bolt. "Then let me give you one now." The wind picked up again, and the train blew its second whistle. She should have turned. She should have walked away. Instead, she stood still. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. "What if you stayed with me?" he asked. "What if that was the reason?" She stared up at him, her throat tight. "That's not fair." "I know." His thumb brushed the edge of her glove. "But it's true. You cannot just say that now, William. After all this time." "You have known I was leaving." "I know," he said. "I thought you would stay. I thought you'd change your mind. I told myself if I just waited, you'd see what was here. But I waited too damn long." The train's wheels groaned on the tracks. She turned to look at it, then back at him. "I cannot stay for a maybe." "It's not a maybe," he said. "It's me. I want you. I want a life with you. I want to build something here together." Her heart pounded, loud and sharp. For a second she saw it, the small ranch house on his land. A warm kitchen. Laughter. Quiet evenings. A child's voice. His hand on hers. "I was ready to leave town forever," she whispered, voice trembling. "Until you said that." William pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed. "Then do not get on that train." She let out a shaky breath, and the carpetbag dropped to the platform with a soft thump. "I won't," she said. He pulled her into his arms. She wrapped hers around his waist, burying her face against his shirt. "You scared the hell out of me," he muttered into her hair. "I thought I lost you." "You almost did," she whispered. "But you stopped me." They stood there as the train pulled away, taking the last 6 years of heartache with it. Behind them, the world was still the same dust and wind and sky, but something essential had shifted. Persephone looked up at him, her hand resting on his chest. "You really want me?" "I always have," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I just thought you deserved better than a dusty cowboy with a quiet ranch and a stubborn heart." "I never wanted better," she said. "I wanted honest. I wanted you." He kissed her then, right there on the platform with the wind howling and the train gone. And for the first time in years, Persephone Dade felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The sun had long since climbed above the cottonwoods by the time Persephone stepped down from William's buckboard, her boots sinking into the soft earth beside his house. The prairie wind carried the scent of dry grass and horses, but here, tucked against the low rise, it felt quieter somehow. More held. William untied the reins and led the team toward the lean-to barn without speaking. The silence wasn't uneasy. It had weight, like something solid between them, not needing to be named. She followed the path to the porch, her skirts brushing the dew-heavy weeds that had grown wild near the steps. The house was plain unpainted pine, a single window on each side of the door, curtains drawn against the morning light. She paused before the threshold, fingers trailing the weathered frame. Her heart hadn't quite caught up with her feet. "You can look inside," William said from behind her. "It's yours too if you want it." She turned to him. The horses were tethered now, his hat pushed back on his head, the wind lifting the hair at his temples. Something in his face had shifted since the station, less guarded, but not expectant. He wasn't asking anything more of her. Just offering. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar smoke and coffee grounds. The floors were swept, the stove cold, the table bare. A single chair stood near the hearth. Not much, but clean. Cared for. "You've lived alone a long time," she said, setting her bag beside the door. "Long enough to know I don't want to anymore." She moved to the window and touched the curtain. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." "You don't have to know yet." He stood in the doorway, arms relaxed at his sides. Not crossing the threshold, not pressing her. Just there. She turned to face him. "You sure about this, William? About me?" He stepped inside then, slow and steady. "You're the only thing I've ever been sure of without needing to think it through." She felt the pull of tears behind her eyes but didn't let them come. "Not here. Not yet." "I'll need to find work," she said. "I've got a neighbor with 3 boys and no wife. He's been looking for someone to teach them letters." She raised a brow. "You offering me to your neighbor?" He grinned, the lines around his eyes creasing. "I'm offering you a way to stay that's your own." She let herself smile, just a little. "You're not who I thought you were. I hope I'm better." She crossed to him, her hand resting lightly on his chest. "You are. And you're still surprising me." He looked down at her hand, then back to her face. "I want to build something real with you. Not just a roof and walls. A life. But only if it's what you want to." "I wasn't ready before," she said. "I thought I had to carry everything alone. But I'm tired, William. I want to rest. I want to believe in something again." "You can't," he said. "Start here." She leaned into him, her head against his collarbone, and let her breath ease out. The quiet between them wasn't hollow anymore. It was full of promise. Outside, the wind bent the grass in low waves. A hawk circled above the far hills. Inside, the stove remained cold, but something else had settled warm between them. She lifted her chin and met his gaze. "You'll show me how to help with the cattle? If you don't mind dust and stubborn beasts. I've handled worse." He laughed then, low and true. "We'll make a fine pair." "I think so too," she said. And neither one of them moved to let go. By late October, the long light of autumn stretched golden over the land, the days growing shorter, colder, quieter. Persephone stood in the small fenced garden behind the house, her shawl pulled tight across her shoulders as she gathered the last of the root vegetables she and William had planted in early August. The soil was dry but forgiving, and her hands moved with the calm rhythm of someone who had stopped waiting to leave. Inside, the kettle would be warming. William had taken the mule wagon to the north end of the property before dawn to help a neighbor repair a broken axle. He'd asked her to come along, offered her the seat beside him with a hopeful glance, but she had shaken her head, hand resting on the porch rail. "I want to finish the last rows," she'd said. "You go on." He touched the brim of his hat and nodded. No coaxing, no questions. Now, with the sun just beginning its slow descent behind the hills, she stood barefoot in the furrows, skirts hitched above her ankles, and listened to the quiet. From somewhere down near the creek, a meadowlark called once and then fell silent. When she heard the wagon wheels crunching over the dry path, she didn't look up at first. She waited until the mule came into view, ears twitching, and William's voice met her across the distance. "Found a horseshoe buried under the axle," he said as he guided the wagon into the yard. "Bent clean in half. Told Hank it was a sign his luck's been running crooked." She dusted her palms on her apron. "And what did he say to that?" He laughed like he meant it but looked like he didn't. She stepped to the gate as he climbed down, his coat dusted with clay and wind. There was a new tear in the sleeve. "You're worse at mending than I thought," she said, brushing dirt from his shoulder. "I never claimed to be good at it." They stood there a moment, the hush between them filled with the sounds of settling birds and the creak of the wagon's harness. She looked up at him, studying the lines around his mouth she hadn't noticed before, the way his eyes kept drifting toward her hands. "I've been thinking," she said, voice low. His eyebrows lifted, but he didn't speak. "I want to build a proper fence before snow comes in. That timber stack near the barn's still good. And the hens could use a better coop. The one you've got leans like it's drunk." He nodded slowly. "You want tools, I'll show you where I keep them." "I want more than that," she said. "I want to start putting my name into this place. Not just live in it." His face changed at that. Not surprised, but something deeper, steadier. Like he'd been waiting for her to say it in her own time. "I'll make space in the shed," he said. "You can keep your own tools if you want them." She smiled, then turned toward the house. "I'll make supper. You clean up and I'll boil water for the wash basin." He touched her wrist before she passed him. "There's something I've been meaning to ask." She stopped, glancing up at him again. "Not about leaving," he said. "Not about staying either. About what we are now. I thought we were figuring that out." "We are." He hesitated. "But I'd like to court you properly. Not just have you here because the train left." She studied his face, the way he wasn't sure what her answer would be. It humbled her, how careful he was with her heart. "I'd like that," she said. "But I don't want flowers or promises you think I expect." "What do you want?" "Honest days. Clean hands. A man who knows when to speak and when not to." He nodded once. "I can give you that." She stepped closer, laid her fingers over his. "Good. Then we understand each other." As she turned again toward the house, he followed her without a word, the soft thud of his boots behind her a sound she'd already begun to count on. Inside, the kettle was just beginning to sing. The first snow came in the night. Persephone woke to the hush of it, the world outside the window pale and heavy with silence. The stove still held the ghost of yesterday's fire, but the chill had crept in through the floorboards, settling into the corners of the room. She rose quietly, wrapping William's old wool coat around her shoulders and stepping outside in her stockings. The air bit at her skin, sharp and clean. Snow blanketed the yard, smoothing over the furrows they'd left in the earth. The mule stood in the pen, breath fogging in the morning light, and the barn roof sagged under the weight of white. She heard the door open behind her. "You'll catch your death," William said, voice rough from sleep. She looked back at him. "I wanted to see how the land looked under snow." He stepped beside her, tugging the collar of his shirt closed. "Never seen it like this. Not from here." They stood without speaking for a long stretch. The snow muffled the world, wrapped it in something softer than silence. "I was thinking," she said finally, "about the East Room." He glanced at her. "What about it? I could turn it into a proper place for sewing. Maybe keep the ledgers for neighbors who can't write. Some of them still come asking. You want to take in work? I don't like to sit idle." He nodded. "We'll need more firewood if you'll be using that room regular. I can help bring it in. You'll need boots for that." She gave him a look. "Then we'll trade in town. I've still got credit at the mercantile." He hesitated. "If we go to town together, folks'll talk." "They already do." "Let them." He didn't answer right away. Then, "You've changed." She considered that. I think I've just stopped waiting for permission. He looked at her, slow and searching. What else have you stopped waiting for? I don't know yet, she said. But I want to find out here. He reached down, brushing snow from her shoulder. You're not afraid anymore. I'm still afraid. Her breath clouded in front of her. But I'm not running. He stepped back and opened the door. Come inside. I'll light the stove. You can tell me more about your plans for the room. She followed him in. The floor creaked beneath their steps. She set the coat aside and moved to the hearth while he knelt to lay kindling. The scent of old ash rose as he struck the match. As the fire caught, she sat near it, stretching her toes toward the warmth. I want to paint the walls come spring, she said. Not white. Something soft. Maybe sage. He didn't answer right away. Then, it suits you, thinking that far ahead. She turned to look at him. Are you glad I stayed? He met her eyes. There's not a day I won't be. She stood and crossed to him, placing her hand against his chest, just above the edge of his collar. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. His hand came up, resting over hers. Then we'll build slow. No need to rush what's already ours. The fire crackled behind them, heat blooming into the room. Snow slid from the window ledge outside, falling with a soft thud to the ground. Inside, the stillness held steady, but the cold had begun to retreat. The first week of December brought a lull in the work. The cattle were settled in the lower pastures, the firewood stacked high beneath the eaves, and the hens, though stingy with their eggs, had finally stopped wandering past the fence line. Persephone stood at the table in the east room, sleeves pushed to her elbows, stitching a worn collar for one of the neighbor boys. The light through the south window was thin, but enough to work by. William passed the doorway, arms full of split pine, and dropped the load near the stove in the front room. She heard the scrape of his boots as he returned for more, then the pause when he lingered just inside the threshold. Mail came in this morning, he said. Ryder dropped it at the gate. She set her needle aside. Anything for us? He stepped in and handed her a single envelope, creased and smudged at the corners. Her name, in a careful, looping hand, was the only thing written on it. It's from Mrs. Loring, she said, sliding her thumb beneath the seal. She's in Chicago now. She used to run the dry goods store in town before her son took over. William rested a shoulder against the doorway, arms crossed. You two kept in touch? Once a year. She was kind to me when I first came west. Told me I'd outlast the men who said I wouldn't. She unfolded the paper and scanned the lines, her mouth softening as she read. William waited quietly, watching her. She says a widow down her street is looking to sell a treadle machine. One of the newer ones, with the steel footplate. Said she thought of me. You want it? Persephone folded the letter. I think I do. It belongs with someone who'll use it. Then we'll send word. I'll talk to the postmaster about arranging freight. She rested the letter on the table. You're sure? You're building something here, he said. I'd rather see it done right than watch you strain your hands over every seam. She came to stand beside him, her fingers brushing the edge of his sleeve. You always know what I need before I say it. No, he said. I just listen close. Later, as dusk gathered, they sat by the hearth, the warmth of the fire spreading into the room. She'd brought her mending basket, but the thread lay untouched in her lap. William sat in the rocker, one boot propped on the edge of the hearth, sharpening a draw knife in slow, even strokes. I've been thinking about spring, she said, drawing her shawl tighter around her shoulders. He looked up. What about it? I want to plant more than turnips and beans. Maybe a row of strawberries, if we can keep the birds off them. I can cut some netting from the old flour sacks, he said. And we'll put up a scarecrow, if you don't mind the company. She smiled, then sobered. I've also been thinking about the preacher. William set the draw knife aside. You're ready? I am. Not because I think we need a ceremony to prove anything, but because I want to stand in front of the town and say I chose this. Chose you. He didn't answer right away. Then he stood, came to kneel beside her chair, and took her hand. You've had the run of my house and heart since the day you stepped off that train, he said. But if you want the preacher, I'll ride into town first light and set the date. She leaned forward until her forehead touched his. Before the thaw, then. I want to begin the season with a new name. 3 weeks later, under a wide sky the color of pewter, they stood in the parlor of the Reverend's house with 2 neighbors as witnesses. Persephone wore her best wool dress, the hem brushed clean of mud, and William had combed his hair so flat she'd almost laughed. He held her hands without trembling, said her name without faltering, and kissed her with the kind of quiet reverence that made her feel steadier than she had in years. Afterward, they rode back to the homestead in the wagon with the mule clopping slow through the drifts. No fanfare. No party. Just the 2 of them, shoulders touching as the land opened wide around them. That night she lit a single lamp and placed it in the window. Not for show. Just so the house would glow from the outside, warm and full. He came behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. You're home now. Can you feel it? She leaned into him. I've never felt it more. The lamp flickered in the glass, casting their reflection faint and golden. Outside the wind moved over the snow in slow, curling patterns. Inside, the fire burned steady, and 2 chairs sat side by side before the hearth. The years ahead would not all be easy. There would be drought and wind, stubborn calves and broken fence lines. But there would also be late suppers, shared coffee, and the kind of laughter that comes when no one else is listening. And always, there would be the quiet certainty of a love that had taken root in hard ground and grown.